So with this, I'm basically going through the basic principles of modelling with families, and you can also do it as a model in place within Revit. I'm not going to be branching into parametric families because when you start to do that, you end up opening an absolute can of worms with that kind of thing. Unlike Kevin's presentation, I'm going to have lots of pictures and videos because I'm quite childish when it comes to that. Just a quick bit about our company. It's ELLUC Projects, quite a young company, focus on design coordination and BIM, predominantly in Revit and Tekla. First of all, we've got the creation tools that we have available here. So if you look at it like it's a video game, from your left to right, you've got Extrusion as the easy difficult, going all the way across to Sweep Blends, which is the more difficult side. So with your extrusions, if these videos actually work, we'll just do a quick run through of it. So in your top left, you've got your Create tab, create your extrusion. System, I'll jump to the next one, haven't I? So you've got Create, you essentially make the profile of the shape there, and then as it says in the title, it extrudes it through to a certain area. You can highlight it using the properties on the left, where you can define it that way, as it will be shown in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. Or alternatively, you'll have the drag arrows there that will appear, where you can drag it and assign it to a component or an element already in place with it. Next, we're jumping onto the blends. So with the blends, it's similar to an extrusion, but what you're having is you've got it starting as a basic shape. You select your top shape and it will be extruding into that shape. So as it says, it will blend into that shape there. So you start off, you've got your bottom component, followed by the top profile of it. Click the tick box and you've got that extruded up into that alternative shape, and that will be presented in the 3D model in a minute here. And then same as before, you can use the properties on the left of it, where you can define it to be a certain height of it, or yet again you can use the drag tool where you can pull it up to that element. Next, we've got a Revolve, where majority of the time with these ones, what you'll essentially do is you'll do it from a side view. Well, that's what we tend to do with majority of our elements. You'll jump to that side view, you'll put in your axis line, so the profile that you're creating will get rotated around that axis line. One of the important aspects of this is making sure your reference planes are correct. You can either do it by picking a plane of the element, or if you've got your sections in place, you can assign it using that part, which is just at the top with that set button to the right. So there's my axis, and my profile is going to rotate around it. I don't know what I was creating, it looks like a bit of a firework, to be honest. Onto your next one there. So you've got your sweep. So with sweeps, it's essentially you're picking a path for your profile to rotate around. This was one of the ones when I started as an apprentice, it took me a while to get my head around. So with this cylinder, what I'm essentially doing is I'll be picking the perimeter of the top face there. When you jump into it, you select your sweep tool on the left, you'll pick your path and assigning it to the full perimeter of the cylinder there. After that, you're going to edit your profile. You can have, prior to this, you can preload in set profile, so this will be quite a useful tool when you're using it for slab edges, and you can have that following around the profile of the building for your up stands, your down stands, or anything else along those lines. Click the tick box twice, and then after that you've got that profile that's protruding around the entire path that you've got selected. Jumping onto the more difficult one, you've got your sweep blend, so full-on combo between your sweeps and your blends. Same again, you're picking your path of it, you pick the perimeter of it, you've got your first profile and you've got your second profile, and essentially it's same as the blend before. You're going to have it sweeping round that path, and it's going to sweep from that first profile across to the second one whatever shape you pick, it's going to sweep round to create that end profile. And then just mirror that across just to finish it off. So then the next part of it is, it's sort of a repetition of what I've just been on about there. You're going to have your voids, which when you've got your shape in place, you're basically removing that element from the existing element you're applying it to. You can have that void applied to multiple elements, or you can just have it applied to a single one using the cut tool. So once you do that, you can have two elements in place, and in essence, if they're both contrasting and, well, combined over the same area, you can have it cut over one and still have the other shape in its entirety. So just a quick run through with these ones, same as before. You've got a void extrusion, so that'll be a basic profile, and it's going to get pulled across the level that you've stated in, or the extents that you want stated. So for us, like I've done a bit of water work myself. When you're branching across, that's handy when you're creating culverts, having the hole go down the center of it, and then you can start working on the inside of that, the walling of the culvert at that point, or manhole. This one, you've got your blend, so same as before, you're going to have your top profile and you're going to have your bottom profile, and it's going to protrude through to that. So it completely removes that profile that you've created from that element. Next, you've got your void revolves. Similar again, where you're selecting your axis line, you're selecting the actual boundary of it, and after that it's gonna rotate around it, and it's gonna remove whatever highlighted areas you've selected in your voids from that. Yet again, it's important to sort of clarify what your reference plane is. Once you've got one of the elements in place, say you've got a rectangular or a cube in place with that, you can use that plane. You can essentially pick the front of that face or any face of that element and use that accordingly. So once you've got your starting basis there, you can work around it, pull out, and use the other elements that you've got created afterwards. So final ones here, we've got your void sweeps. So these will be good, say for instance, if you're not massively into your M&E work, if you're creating a pipe and you want a fitting assigned to the end of it, and it's got a certain manufacturer's profile to be cut into, you can use the sweep around the outside of the element that you've already created, pull that through, and then you've got a fitting to a certain extent. Maybe it's not as advanced as the M&E tools, but if you don't have them readily available, then it's a better tool to use than nothing, or just have them clashing with one another. So last one, sweep blends. So same as I mentioned before, it's the case of you picking the path of that, you've got your starting profile and you've got your end profile, and it's going to sweep round into that end profile that you've got selected or you've got created. If you tend to like to skip on time with your projects, it's good if you know you're using a profile multiple times over. You can create that and you can save that profile to be reused. As I said before, it's quite handy if you've got a certain height or certain type of upstand that you're using for that. And then the next one, it's the case of, obviously when you're creating these elements, you don't want them all to be assigned as the same structural material. So I'd advise, if you're actually bringing these families into a project, your best protocol to do will be to use the transfer project standards. And once you've done that, you can bring across the materials that are being used in your current project at hand. You don't need to worry about creating the new ones. You're bringing them all across from that project. You know they're the ones you're going to use. There's not going to be any contrast between the materials or the colorings that are being used, so you're not going to lose the definition when you bring it back across into it. So with them ones there, I've got the precast concrete for the inside of it, some insulation between, followed by the exterior of it. For sake of this, we're just going to change it to metal to have a bit of variety there with the materials for it. And then finally we're just going to chuck in that base as the precast concrete as well. So the reason I've ended up doing the presentation about this is probably about a year ago I ended up being involved with a project with MBS which was called the BIM Toolkit. It's quite a useful tool for all project managers out here. It's essentially where you create all your deliverables on the website for a project as such, and as Kevin mentioned, Kevin was on about before, it's useful for plugging that into your Kobe data afterwards with your deliverables and what the criteria for each deliverable is. So in essence, you could have your steel beam in place, and one of the deliverables would be to have your top of steel defined for each of them. So just a quick one with these, we've got an eel and overpass, a passenger loading bridge, so jumping into airports and security systems, and then finally a wastewater scum remover. One of the last things to touch on is the level of definition. When you're creating these families or the components, the best thing to establish at first is the level of definition that you're using. If someone's just asking for concept work, you're not going to produce an in-depth model or in-depth family for that nature of it. You just have, for instance, with your brief or concept, you're essentially starting with just a block on top of the topography, whereas you're moving over into the build and commission side of things or design, where you're going to have your in-detail family or component. You're going to have all your structural connections in place with that kind of thing, and what other necessities are needed for that. Last thing, I did enjoy Blue Peter as a child, but I hated that part where it skipped over the processes and it just goes, this is your end product. So even though it is a little bit quick and times by 600, this is just a live example of one of the ones that I did across lunchtime today. Sit down for this one. Apologies if there's any errors. No, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that would be handy up there.
We don't all let it dance along then.
Joking with you, but you don't have to like each other.
Has anybody else got the Benny Hill theme?
If anyone's a good singer, feel free to get a put through.
This is how fast I work as normal speed.
After that glass of wine.
After a couple of glasses of wine, yeah. This is how fast I think I work at normal speed after a couple of glasses. It's strangely hypnotic, isn't it?
It's nearing the end, people.
I hope we're going to applaud at the end of this training. So you designed the Hump Bridge in your Hump Bridge?
Yes.
Okay. You good? Golden Gate Bridge.
Just the first one I popped up on Google, which is and then after that, just the final one. What's what? If for anyone that wasn't here, the last session, Joaquin was going on about the rendering of products. So after doing that, that's essentially the final design that ended up popping out from that family that got created. Any questions?